Chapter 8.3 You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. A Beauty Swaying in the Steam, Part 3. In front of my eyes was a pure white back with beautiful contours, not a single blemish could be found on it, and on top of it lay an even more suggestive layer of glossy black hair. I ordered Oichi to put her hands on a rock at the edge of the bath. There was no apparent place Oichi could lay down, and she would probably not be able to handle the pain if I would sit down with her on top of me. If that's the case, there is no other option left but to do it while standing up. There was no other choice but to do it here. Oichi and I were completely excited. It seems like we wouldn't leave this bath before doing something first. Oichi. You really are a fine woman. Thank you very much. I glide my fingertips along her spine, feeling her thin waist with the palm of my hands and rubbing her beautiful white bottom. After feeling up the elasticity of her breasts, I pushed away my lovely wife's black hair and exposed her pure white neck. I ran my tongue along her spine, slowly creeping my way to the side of her hip, leaving Oichi trembling while her body gave out a jolt. Those honest responses were so cute that I couldn't hold myself back anymore, so I turned her face to me with my hands and pressed my lips against hers. Each time our tongues entwined, her waist trembles, and when our lips separated she looked at me with tearful eyes as if she was longing for more. What a lovely woman. After discovering Oichi's erogenous zones and caressing her up to the inside of her thighs, I started raining down kisses along her back. Doing so made Oichi's waist start convulsing in a very funny way while her heavy breaths became even more tense. He, watching the rock where Oichi was leaning on, I could tell she was trembling while trying to put strength in her flexible fingertips. She is trying not to come while enduring it. Oichi's resistance became even more interesting, so I used one hand and put my fingers in her mouth and began to play with her soft tongue while I used the other hand to pinch her nipple. I didn't forget to bite her slender white neck slightly while doing that. Nagamasa-sama. Her voice calling my name resonated through the dark night. With a jolt, her waist sprung even more than before, and after that, her entire body trembled and lost its strength. I put my hands on her waist and breast and forcibly lifted up her new powerless body that seemed to want to plunge into the hot spring. Oichi. HNNNANL.RG. As I turned Oichi around, I entwined my tongue with hers, and as I pinched her nipple strongly with one hand, I crept my fingers on my other to the entrance of her sensitive vagina that just orgasmed. Did it feel good? Yes. From now on you have to say, "I'm coming," when you feel like coming. I taught you that, right? Ah. But that's embarrassing. I want to know everything about you. I understand. As I caressed her vagina, Oichi let out a moan with a completely enchanted face. As her insides kept sucking on my fingertips, her slimy cum continued coming out endlessly like drool from her vagina. It wasn't the sound of water but the sound of Oichi's dirty fluids coming from her insides that spread through the veil of darkness. I'm also close to my limit. I held her hips tightly, then put my penis near the entrance of her vagina and pushed in firmly. Right after the sensation of plunging into her, I felt a heat different from the heat of the hot spring enveloping my lower body. After penetrating her with my penis, I could tell that I was able to go in a little deeper than when we were in the missionary position. Feeling my penis penetrating her, Oichi's body, which just climaxed, jolted back up again. Her insides were sticky and soft, but it kept coiling firmly around my penis, sucking on it without pause. No, it's too deep. Proceeding even further through her hips, I could feel how my penis reached the end and bumped into the entrance of her womb. That being said, my penis still has a lot of vigor left. As I thought, it seems that just using her insides wouldn't be enough to satisfy my meat rod. I kept knocking on her womb lightly, making Oichi's body tremble to the point that it looked funny. Does it feel good? HNNNNN. It's good. It feels good. But, it hurts. It hurts, but it feels good. I thought she looked lovely and felt like teasing her a little, so I whispered close to her bright red ears. Tell me, Oichi. Does it feel really good? Yes. My body feels like it's floating, but I feel Nagamasa's strong thing and Oichi can't. You are so cute. As I caressed Oichi's face. Indra is watching your beauty. 1. The moment I whispered that to Oichi, I felt Oichi's vagina making a tremendous change. Her walls that kept sticking tenderly to my penis, allowing me to move in and out, suddenly clamped down on my penis, squeezing it really hard. The entrance to her womb opened up and devoured the tip at the same time, making my hips tremble with a sudden shake. Even if I didn't move right now, I had the feeling that my sperm would be sucked out either way. I pulled off my hips in a hurry. However, my true self surfaced, and without being able to forget the feeling of Oichi's insides, I plunged it into her once more. Doing so made Oichi call out to Indra in a frantic way while letting out heavy breaths. Don't look. Please don't look. No, it's no good. While leaning backward towards me and trembling, Oichi complained while shaking her head frantically. However, the moment she became conscious of the fact that Indra was watching her lewd act, she received a huge stimulus. I once again am reminded that Oichi's disposition towards sex is overflowing. That being said, it's not like Indra would have any interest in human copulation. If she were watching us just a moment ago, she would have probably opened her huge mouth to let out a yawn. For a while, I kept slamming my hips against her beautiful ass. Her bottom shook vigorously, her back twisted and twisted over and over again, her hair whirling around. The face of the so-called number one beauty of the Sengoku era was no longer show anything else than lust and desire. Furthermore, I, who was also drowned in desire, grinded my hips even harder and kept pistoning in and out. No. Hi. Yeah. My penis kept twisting around, squashing and kissing her perverted mouth repeatedly. While raising up her lovely voice, Oichi grasped my hands that were holding her waist, and her back began stretching with a jolt. Nagamasa-sama, it's too deep. It hurts. Hiya. An. Oichi's womb was still undeveloped, so even if I thrust and stroked her there, I was certain that it would give her both a strange feeling and a dull pain at the same time. However, from the looks of it, I could tell that her moment of climax was approaching. While trying not to stimulate her uterus as much as I could, I took my hands off her waist and made Oichi face towards me as I pressed my lips against hers once more. I sucked her tongue, licked it all over and twisted it inside her mouth. I pinned down Oichi's hips with one arm while increasing the force of my pistoning and crept my other hand towards her clitoris. Each time I pistoned, my penis filled with blood in, Oichi's body sprung up as if it was scared and her lovely voice became even tenser. Nagamasa-sama, Nagamasa-sama. Oichi is all ready. What's wrong? It's coming again. That is, I'm coming. Good, that's fine. You remembered to say it this time, that's great. I let out a devilish roar as my hips became engulfed in pleasure. Oichi moved her hands along the hot springs rocks and began to indulge earnestly in the pleasure she was receiving from the movements of my hips. Her completely wet insides made my penis expand even more. My fingers reached the hood of the clitoris, and I now touched the very sensitive bud. An. Good, it's good. I'm becoming a mess. Good, that's great. Become a mess, become even more sloppy. Yes. I'll go crazy, Oichi. Is becoming a total mess. Nagamasa-sama will become a mess too. And together we'll make a baby. An. I keep pistoning in her dirty hole while desperately enduring against the heat and the strange convulsions that her carnal hole gave me, while slowly reaching my point of ejaculation. At that time Oichi let her hair go wild and raised her lovely voice even louder. While pounding my hips roughly and watching her below me as she took the impact of my pistoning holding onto the rocks with both arms, I could imagine her being a mother and wondered if the peach-colored tips of that abundant and beautiful pair of hills would stiffen even more at that point. The moment I imagined that I became unable to bear it anymore. Oichi, I can't hold it in anymore. I'm letting it out. I'll pour lots inside of you. Yes, please. Please, pour lots inside Oichi's insides. Oichi, Oichi, Oichi. Nagamasa.sama, Nagamasa.sama, Nagamasa.sama. I'm coming. I took hold of Oichi's waist and poured the proof of my lust inside her. There seemed to be no end to how much I was able to come inside her. It was just one round, but Oichi's hole was being filled to the brim with several helpings of semen. Her walls pulsated, sucking my semen out towards her deepest parts. There the gaping mouth of her womb opened up and went on drinking my released cum. Ah! Aa1. Letting go of my hands, Oichi's entire lower body fell into the bath, making the water splash and resound. She let out a moan sweeter than anything I've heard before from her mouth as her hips trembled while her entire body convulsed. I held her in my arms like a princess, and while holding her like that, I sat down cross-legged while plunging in the hot spring once more. I can't let her body go cold after all. I can feel it. Inside of Oichi's belly, there's lots of Nagamasa.sama seed. I see. I gave gentle kisses on her lips, face, nose, head and the nape of her neck, in that order. Then while stroking her hair tenderly with one hand, I caressed her face with the other, feeling up her softness. Slowly creeping down one of my hands to her vagina again, I fondled it tenderly with my index finger. Oichi looked completely satisfied, even letting out a soft breath. Nagamasa.sama, was Oichi able to conceive properly? We will have to wait and see. I smile at Oichi while pressing my lips gently against hers. This is something that only the gods can decide. There is no other option than to pray. You are right. Ah! Oichi's hips trembled with a jolt and rapidly ran both hands to the entrance of her vagina. No. No. Don't come out, please. While letting out a tragic cry, I looked around for what she was gazing at. I was able to see that the turbid fluid that I poured inside her vagina started flowing out, slipping through her slender fingers and floated away in the red-colored warm water. Why? Why? While letting out half a cry, Oichi desperately pressed her hands on her vagina, but the flow of semen would not stop. Seeing her like that, she looked so adorable to the point where I couldn't help myself, and without giving it a second thought, I hugged her tightly. Nagamasa.sama, Nagamasa.sama's stuff is coming out. Sobbing repeatedly, Oichi began crying for real this time. Well, of course, it's normal for the semen that surpassed the limit of her insides to flow out. Or perhaps I should say, it would be troublesome in the future if it didn't flow out. However, for her right now, it seems that holding my semen in her vagina is the most important thing in the world. Was she thinking that seriously about getting pregnant with my child? It's okay. I whispered in her ear while fondling her soft breast gently. We got tomorrow, the day after and even many days after that. I will make sure to pour some inside you each day. Yes. While looking at Oichi's innocent smile, a thought came to me. That I wanted to see that smile for the rest of my life. I really should make sure not to die young. I'll keep on living in this era with my beloved wife. I cleaned Oichi's body with the rice bran and then, while letting her wash my back, I made that decision. On the way back to Odani Castle we walked past an Indra statue when Oichi noticed that. She clamped onto me and sent multiple glances towards my direction. I once again began polishing my plans for the continued existence of the Azai family. Indra. Sakra Devanam Indra, deity of Hinduism, Jainism, and Buddhism. Chapter 9.1 You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. The objective is to encourage commerce, Part 1, in the Sengoku era, to not let the great continent stray and preserve its independence. What is necessary and indispensable are economic power and human relations. At least that's what I concluded based on the results of my investigations in Western, Oriental and Japanese history. The world is not simply built on military forces. Many things are needed to continue our current lifestyles, and that's why a military force is not enough. The scale is built more upon supply and demand. Since humanity came into existence on this planet, they have developed various ways to communicate, such as words and letters. But then again, why did they develop these things? According to collaborative studies with linguists and anthropologists, the communication between people was made to ask for what is desired. The basis for communication is to fulfill the demands and supply one another, and in order to make this an even smoother process, money was invented. The foundations for the various relations in the Sengoku era must be roughly the same. After the end of the Unin War I, each land held its own military power, and each made its own original community. However, in the end, it was nothing more than a structure that intertwined and piled up the demands and supply of each individual person inside the community. It is more commonly known as Shigarami. Too, the people called daimyo held those ties as well. Even the historical Azai Nagamasa was no different. He carried his short life thoughtfully without ever thinking ill about the brother of his beloved wife, Oda Nobunaga. However, Azai Nagamasa's father and the majority of his retainers preside over the lands Ashikaga and Kaigenji of the Takeda clan. In addition to that, they also desire a cooperation with the powerful neighboring state of the Asakura clan. Nagamasa, who could not shake off those Shigarami, was in the end forced to wage war against his brother-in-law. Nagamasa himself didn't wish for that from the bottom of his heart, and he also understood that he couldn't send his wife, Oichi, back to the Oda clan. And since Nagamasa was able to grasp the situation, he continued to recommend yielding until his brother-in-law besieged Odani Castle and attacked it. In order to not let the Azai crumble, there are two things I need to accomplish. First of all, regarding the relation between demand and supply, within the limits of these lands, I must feed them the idea, we are helpless without the Azai. Secondly, to make these Shigarami maintain themselves, I need to associate myself with as many people as I can. If the Azai falls and I am left with no other alternatives, I will take Oichi and escape to the border. We could make a living there making either malt or selling soap. For me, who took this trip to the Sengoku era for no reason at all, there is only one priority, my wife, Oichi. Anything else seems insignificant. 17th of January, the year 1567, 10th year of the Iroku era, early in the morning. As I was pondering about these things, Oichi began squirming around on my chest. The joint on her kimono loosened up, showing me the back of her neck. As Oichi was acting all flirty, she also let out some pretty heavy HNNNNNs out of her mouth. Now I'm really wondering what kind of dream she's having. I traced my index finger around Oichi's beautiful and youthful lips. As I did so, her mouth opened up a little, and she began devouring my finger. At first, I was only observing her while thinking how cute she looked, but as her tongue began crawling around my finger, I began noticing something strange. The thing is, she was only licking the tip of my finger, while her lips were trying to devour the rest of my finger, making sure not to hit my finger with her teeth. Like that, she began sucking on it. Deciding that I would teach her later how to devour my big son, I pull out my finger as to not wake Oichi up. The interview with the retainers will be carried out during the morning. I must also prepare some souvenirs for them. However, the problem is in the afternoon. Anyway, time is short. I changed myself quickly and headed towards the kitchen with quick steps. Unin War. A war between the years 1467 and 1477. Shigarami. Ties of Obligation. Chapter 9.2. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. The objective is to encourage commerce, Part 2, the time of the ram. In my previous life, this meant between 12 and 2 p. M. 5 men came in a hurry to the meeting I planned while lowering their heads. This included 3 famous commanders who were the pride of the Oda clan, also referred to as the Kayakage 1. Kaiho Tsunagachi, Akeo Kayatsuna, and Amanamari Kayasada, accompanied by Azai Tsukechika, and the last person was Azai Masamoto. This meeting is not a formal one but one I called out for personally. Starting with the council next month, in order for arguments and resolutions to flow more smoothly, I thought it was better to interview them individually in order to express my personal thoughts and will to them in advance. Oichi was silently sitting behind me, firmly watching the scene unfold. You lot, you did well in coming here. Yeah. I started off with calling to them in a grateful voice, making them lift up their faces. The reason I called you all here is none other than to discuss the advancement of the goals for the country plan that I previously mentioned. Is that so? Kayasada nodded. For him who also plays a huge role in the internal administration, he is probably the person who pays the most interest in this plan. The reason I called out the ones who are in charge of our armies, Tsunagachi and Kayatsuna, was merely out of good manner. From inside the Kaigakugame, Nagamasa-sama has an important position for Amanamari-Dano to play. 2. If rumors like that were to leak out, the insides of the Azai family would crumble and head towards a dangerous path. First of all, if we look at the troubling points inside our domains, the first thing that comes to mind is that we are not taking full advantage of our geographical supremacy of some important transportation points. Tsunagachi silently nodded to this statement. For someone in charge of military affairs like him, a problem in transportation also affects supply trains for battle, which greatly concern him. Therefore, the most important objective of those of us stationed here at Omi is the administration and maintenance of our many main roads that make up our highway. But that would take an unusual quantity of gold. Certainly, the maintenance of our main roads would make the deployment of our troops much faster as well, but on the other hand this would also mean that it would be easier for our enemies to attack us. Kayatsuna said so while crossing his arms. While the current dispute with the Matsuno clan continues, doing maintenance on the main roads could be very perilous. But it is possible to use the roads that go along Kadani and Sawayama, right? The lands comprised from Kadani Castle in the northern part of Omi all the way down to Sawayama Castle in the southern part of Omi are all under the influence of the Azai family, and the many citizens that it holds have all pledged their obedience. In the Sengoku era, the public order is generally safe, and the possibility of being attacked by enemies in the middle of paving a new road is slim. However, Anijo, I deeply apologize, but as you know, the Azai family is not desperately in need of money, but we can't be called rich either. To handle the maintenance of the roads leading from Honju to Sawayama, even though I'm not sure what it will cost. The reality will be that we won't be able to afford it. My younger brother, Masamoto, said so in an apologetic voice. The reason I called for Masamoto is that he is the one who single-handedly supervises the financials of Odani Castle, making him a superior financial bureaucrat that can easily summarize whether my plans are executable or not. No matter what era, if there's no money, there's no way to act. That is correct indeed. And it is for that very reason that we need to raise our funds to shoulder those costs. The 5 men all crossed their arms and started pondering about what was said. That being said, you would think that daimyos have easy ways to make money, but in reality, it's quite hard. For a daimyo to attain some quick funds, all they would have to do is tax the farmers by taking some of their grains and exchange it for gold. However, by doing so, we could be incurring the resentment of the farmers, and there is a possibility of a large-scale riot breaking out. Leaders come in many different patterns from warriors to monks, however, in reality, the ones who make up the biggest numbers are the farmers. If a riot does break out, the feudal lord will have no option but to suppress it by mobilizing its troops. But this would mean that the soldiers will undoubtedly kill farmers who are the main producers of those grains, which in turn would mean that we have less grain coming in on the following years. If we lose our loyalty, our agricultural community will decline. If we lose our farmers, our fields will decline. Even if we were to recover from this situation, it would take years of strenuous effort to return it to its previous glory. In short, if a riot does break out, the ruling side will always come out in an unfavorable position. For that reason, introducing a new tax to fill the cost needed to maintain our main roads is too risky of a plan. Since taxes are not an option, the only option left would be for the Azai family to use the income from its own territory minus the expenditures that we spend on our soldiers and administration and use whatever is left to pay for the roads ourselves. However, as Masamoto explained earlier, finances of the Azai family are currently quite grave. We simply do not have the money to buy gravel for the pavement operations or to pay the laborers to maintain the roads. However, if we are able to prepare an infrastructure road system like the ones of the Edo period, the masses would be able to travel around easier. Wishing to live in a place that's comfortable and cozy is something most humans would want. Thus the maintenance of the roads is a very important enterprise to plunder the masses from the other territories and draw them into the domain of the Azai family. That's why we need to build up an industry and raise our income. As a simple measure to do that, I propose using hot springs and building a hot spring health resort business. Hot springs? You say? Tsukechika asked so with a blank face. That's right. Surely you know that here in northern Omi there are many sources of hot water, right? In fact, there seems to be one at the foot of this Kotaniyama 3. The men nodded at this statement. However, that hot spring is in a rough state right now. It's currently just a fountain coming from the depths of the earth creating a basin where people can soak a little. I continued after a short pause. In order to prepare a section to hold the hot water, we'll build a bathhouse. It will be managed by the people of the Azai family. With the exception of kids, it should take about 2.5 centimeters of space per person. I see. I think it's a good idea. That being said, as Masamoto stated previously, we are financially restricted, so wouldn't building a bathhouse in northern Omi be equally challenging? Tsunagachi asked with a calm voice. However, I had already made plans regarding this. Before building the bathhouse, we'll publish an official notice. At the time of the construction, we will be accepting donations. And then regarding the people who contributed to the cause, they will have their names engraved on the walls as collaborators. Below my name, of course. I see. Having their name engraved along Nagamasa-sama's would be a great honor for the townspeople and farmers. If that's the case, it should attract donations. Tsunagachi nodded. Once the bathing facilities are prepared, we'll take money from the people using them. Yes, I haven't thought about that option before. For the time being, let's assume we'll get an income out of the bathing facilities. There won't be many who use them, but as the saying goes, many a little makes a mickle. With the passing of many years, it should build up a good sum. I see, so that's what it's all about. Kayasada slapped his knees in sight of approval. Nagamasa-sama doesn't intend to use the obtained funds for the maintenance of the roads, but is planning on using it on another project, right? That is correct. I nodded to Kayasada. I intend to build a workshop for cotton, silk, and soap here in northern Omi. Nagamasa-sama, the silk should be doable, but cotton could be somewhat difficult. Tsukechika continued. Currently, the only people in the entire country who know the process for making cotton are the Mikawa and Tumi clans, in other words only people living in the Tokugawa domains. And I don't expect the Tokugawas to hand over that process to us. I took that comment very seriously. Because perhaps the head of the Tokugawa family, Tokugawa Ieyasu, and I will have to negotiate directly. There is no doubt that they will demand something of equal value. What do you intend to do about the sericulture industry? Tsukechika asked me. Until now this land of northern Omi has not been prosperous, and sericulture has mostly been a side profit of most farmers. Hearing Nagamasa-sama's proposal, I can say for sure that we currently can't support it, with the little sericulture that we have. That's right. I nodded slowly and answered. Until now, the sericulture has been spread over many different households. However, I feel that we need to change this and make this a business that is being conducted intensively in one place. Raise huge numbers of silkworms, take lots of threads and make lots of silk. If we do so, the day when Northern Omi becomes the titleholder of silk products in the nation won't be a faraway dream. Certainly. While nodding in agreement, Tsunagachi murmured, an intensive sericulture industry. That would give us without a doubt a huge profit. By the way, Nagamasa-sama, what in the world is this soap you mentioned earlier? Tsunagachi asked me, looking very curious. Ah, right. I completely forgot about that fact. That the word soap itself doesn't exist in Japan in this era. By the way, the word soap appeared after the start of the Nanban trade 5 around the 17th century. Spain in that century was the most powerful nation in the world. One of their biggest industries was the production of soap products. Spain placed soap as the centerpiece of its country's products, selling it not only in Europe but in Japan and the rest of Asia as well. At the height of my 8th syndrome, I was charmed by that little piece of knowledge, so I learned many different ways to produce soap. In the end, that will be helping me to raise the funds of the Azai family. When and where the experience of my previous life will be useful in my current one is truly unpredictable. Soap is something that washes away the filth on humans, horses, and quite possibly anything else. It closely resembles the use of rice bran. I see, that is indeed something curious. However, inconveniently enough, we don't have any stocks. Gathering the necessary materials would also take a good amount of time as well. Then, it's okay to assume that our first move in this plan would be the construction of the bathhouse, the management of the bathhouse, and focusing us on the sericulture industry. As our conversation is reaching its conclusion, Tsukechika summarized it accurately. His ability to run a conversation or a meeting is surprisingly high. A bathhouse that will produce immediate results and a sericulture industry that will take time to produce results but will end up giving us huge profits. I think it's a good plan, Anijo. Masamoto said so with an extremely enthusiastic attitude. Well, to an administrative officer of financial affairs like him, the idea of increasing income and stabilizing finances must be great to hear. For that sake, he even dares to jump right into an industry that is unknown to him right now. As I thought, leaving Nagamasa aside, the Azai brothers are the most capable men. Well then, let's have a meeting later to discuss this further. Yes. Today we came for a good cause. After saying that, I ended our meeting. Tsunechika was the first to stand up, and after giving a bow, the men took their leave. With all of their faces bright with expectation, having approved the plan and waiting with anticipation to execute it. You did well, Nagamasa-sama. After everyone left, I sat beside Oichi, and she smiled back at me. Nevertheless, the construction of a bathhouse, huh? It will certainly become useful. Yeah, that's right. If it raises day-to-day convenience, then it should be able to draw in people. However, what is it? I need to work out when I will release it to the people. Those people will be troublesome for when we use it. Whispering that in Oichi's ear made her face go completely red and she hid it behind her hands. It seems like she remembered the hot spring situation from last night. She looked so lovely that without thinking about it, I ended up embracing her around the shoulders. I could feel her soft skin under the thick kimono. I'm embracing it right now, that white and beautiful proportional supple body that I was able to see naked under the sunlight. Thinking about that made the muscles around my spine tremble, and a suspicious feeling began shrouding my hips. I want to change locations right now and do it in our room. I want to spread her legs, making her slowly melt and thrust it into her sloppy honey pot. Then I want to pour lots of my dirty juice deep inside of her who asked to be impregnated with my child yesterday and watch her belly grow through this year. Imagining that caused my big son to begin awakening by squirming around. That being said, doing it on the tatami mats while squatting on one's knees sounds painful, so I'll have to crush the dark desire to push her down right now and hold out until tonight. When you hold yourself back, anything will taste better in the end. Things that were tasty already will become even more delicious. Then again, it goes without saying that doing things in a rush will make the taste a little duller. Say, Oichi. What is it? Resting her face on my chest, while looking at me with a gentle smile, my lovely wife asked me in a sweet voice. Surely, my brother-in-law, Nobunaga would pull his hair in terror if he watched this scene. He would probably say something along the lines of, "My dear sister. In merely a week you have become this seductive," in a panicked voice. Well, in the Sengoku era there is nothing besides unskillful sex play, so there is a world of difference from my previous life. Also, there is a cultural problem. Currently during intercourse, the woman never takes on a dominant position. If we take the cowgirl position as an example, during this era, it wouldn't be, let the woman move and ride on the man, but to, let the man do the moving by letting her ride atop of the man's hips. In short, in the Sengoku era, the fundamental for any marital relationship was just for the man to attack and the woman to receive, and there weren't many sexual positions to pick from either, so they were stuck with the same type of sex. That is why most daimyos looking for freshness get tired of their wife and begin to usher in concubines, and once they get tired of their concubine, they indulge in another one. By the way, the one who shined the most in Japan was the greatest strategist Matsunaga Hisahide. He obtained a how.to sex book called the Kusomuran, and he studied it carefully. He experimented with it every night on women and captivated a great number of them, getting the name of the sex leader of the Sengoku era. He even passed the secrets of his manual of the night to his subordinates and said, "If the woman is not in the mood, it's better to abstain oneself." His daughter devoted herself to Christianity and spread its teachings. However, Hisahide's devotion lay more towards the path of Eros. The things Hisahide said was that sex was not just the act of taking it in and out. The man is satisfied after thrusting it in and out, rubbing it and then ejaculating, but for the woman, this creates a feeling of distrust towards the man. The important thing is to raise up one's mood, that's what should take priority over anything else. The intellectual spirit and noted tea master, he destroyed his tea bowl denying it to his enemies 6. His story is still being told to people in the future. Well, if I do meet him I will no doubt be murdered, so I absolutely do not wish to meet with him. 7. While thinking that, I closed up to Oichi's ear. Her body twisting in embarrassment was so cute. But being unable to run from my arms, she was at her limit. With her cheeks dyed red, Oichi eventually permitted the approach of my lips to her ear. "Tonight. I'll make you feel good by filling you up. Nagamasa-sama." Her entire face dyed in red, she turned herself over while grabbing onto my chest and facing me she said the following. You can't. We can't. Do something like that this early in the noon. It's something we definitely cannot do." After saying that, Oichi ran away from the room. However, her expression didn't show any anger at all, on the contrary. The lust in her heart was seen through. I was unable to feel any embarrassment from her. Last night she wished to be impregnated with my child, so every time we touched she must have felt the faint flame of desire burning from the depths of her womb. Ah! How cute! After murmuring that, I took a look at the outside scenery from the room's window. Every tree in Kotaniyama are growing fresh, thick and green, and its birds remain in silence now. I wonder if tonight will be cold as well. Having my body tremble from the cold wind that was blowing, made me straighten up my kimono. Sengoku era. The winter of January is cold, the coming of spring will be soon upon us. In these tough and cold nights, the only thing to do is to get into my futon while embracing Oichi and carefully warming each other up. Having raised my expectations for what will happen tonight in our bedroom, I called out a servant and made him bring me a map of Odani Castle and Omi. First of all, I have to plan out where exactly we should focus our efforts on encouraging commerce, so I began examining the map seriously. Chapter 10.1 You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Development of my wife, Part 1. Having finished my business, I entered Oichi's room. There she was waiting for me sitting on her knees in the center of the room. As soon as she confirmed my presence, Oichi stuck out 3 fingers and lowered her head deeply. The maids lowered their heads to me as well as they left the room. The faint light of the lantern hanging from the ceiling illuminated the dim room. I took Oichi's hand and went towards the futon laid out for us. I sat down cross-legged in the center of the futon and sat her down on my lap. Oichi's cheeks were flushed in embarrassment, however, expecting to receive some pleasure from me, she leaned back onto my chest. As I took and threw aside her bridal and seasonal cloths, to try and make her feel safe, I caressed her head and shoulders slowly and gently. Doing so made her melt, and immediately after she began giving a feverish look towards my direction. Kissing the nape of her neck made Oichi's body tremble with a shiver, and whenever I used my teeth, she would jump a little with a twitch. When I separated my mouth from her neck, a red kiss mark was left where my mouth was. The proof of my conquest that I left behind on her pure white skin. Watching this as I tasted every single pleasure in succession, I slowly guided one of my hands inside her underwear and began touching her rich, soft and at the same time elastic breast. Were you hoping for this? That's not. Trying not to touch her nipple, I traced her areola with my fingertip, turning Oichi's breathing wild. Seeing that she began squirming her ass in a fidgeting way, made me laugh with a complacent smile. What's wrong? Aren't you a little too restless? That's well. Nagamasa-sama HNNN. I strengthened my embrace around Oichi and pressed my lips against hers. However, this time, unlike any previous ones, I didn't immediately put my tongue in. Just pecking at her lips and sucking on them, waiting for her lively tongue to come out by itself. No, that is no good. It's okay, isn't it? Her lips opened up a little, and this time I thrust in my tongue. While making a dazed face, Oichi accepted my tongue. With a slurp I sucked her tongue, making her body tremble with a twitch. Once I poured some of my saliva in her mouth, she drank it earnestly, making her hips tremble, and as we entwined each other's tongue, she clung on to me tightly. I'll ask you once again, Oichi. I asked while looking at Oichi. You were hoping for this, right? Yes. Oichi looked down, embarrassed. By doing so, she let her pure white neck exposed and defenseless. Tracing the pretty line that I made with the kiss marks that I left on her with my tongue, made Oichi grab tightly onto my arms, making her back stiffen and drained all her strength in one go. Her breathing turned even wilder, and her skin was flushed. Somehow it seemed that with only kissing and licking her neck made her reach an orgasm. Maybe Oichi likes to be teased with words while I mess around with her body. I pressed my lips against Oichi's, who was trembling in pleasure, and teased the inside of her mouth with my saliva. Meanwhile, I took off her underwear and let her beautiful naked body become completely exposed. Having reached her climax must have made her dizzy. While undressing my wife, her rich breasts became exposed to my eyes. While exhausted, she leaned onto my chest. Taking the narrow sash coiling around her waist, I covered both of her eyes and tied it on the back of her head. Having her field of vision taken away suddenly, Oichi, as expected, looked confused, struggling violently against my chest, desperately trying to remove the sash covering her eyes. However, I wasn't going to let her do as she pleased. I forced Oichi's body face down and tied both her arms, pinning her entire body down with one hand. No. Nagamasa-sama, please stop. This is scary. This is a punishment. Whispering that into her ears, Oichi gradually lost her will to resist. Just a while ago, you didn't properly answer my question. This is a punishment for that, you understand? Yes. I feel that it's an unreasonable reason, but ending up obeying even that is what makes her Oichi. That being said, teasing her way too much is a problem as well. Humans have their limits, after all, everyone has a limit to how much they can bear. If one treads around it too much, it will become a drawn-out resentment and might even turn into a vengeful tragedy. That's why I whispered the following to the blindfolded Oichi. This is something for Oichi to get to know me better. Forgive me. To know Nagamasa-sama. Oichi raised up her voice in doubt. She was taking my actions into account somehow after all. If I don't properly follow it up, it might become an unpleasant experience. I gave Oichi a soft kiss and whispered into her ear. We creatures known as humans shouldn't just believe in what we can see with our unwise eyes. However, there is something that humans can see even without their vision. This is what we call the heart. Heart. That's right. It's something that one might lose if they rely too much on their sense of vision. I continued while embracing Oichi tightly. Oichi, how are you feeling right now? Not looking with your eyes, how do you sense me right now? Try giving me an answer. While being blindfolded, Oichi placed her head on my chest, and while creeping both her arms around me, she murmured. It's warm. I feel a calm pulsation creating thumps. It's very gentle. I see. I said so while kissing Oichi's neck and ears. That's the me you perceived. Even though we have become a couple, it hasn't been that long. And then last night you told me that you wanted to bear my children. I felt like I wanted you to know more about me. More than anyone, I wanted you who I love so much to know about me, about the true me. Nagamasa-sama. Well, it was something that I just made up just now. I felt like it would be bad if I didn't follow up properly, so it's an excuse that I made up in the spur of the moment. That being said, even though it was something that I made up just now, I wouldn't call it a complete lie. Because in truth, I'm quite charmed with Oichi and in love with her. Speaking of Oichi, she suddenly hugged me as if overcome by emotion. She desperately kept repeating words of apology while clinging onto my chest. Probably thinking something along the lines of, to doubt my husband even for a second. I'm such a terrible wife. If we were in the world where I come from, she would be the type that would get cheated on by some terrible man. As her husband, it worries me a little. I'm a bad man, so I really am not one to speak though. As I kissed her once again, I slowly began fondling the lower side of her breast. As I closed in on her rich breasts, feeling the deep chasm in between, I gently devoured her trembling nipples. No. Nagamasa-sama, that's scary. Relax. I extended one arm, and as I touched Oichi's face, I said. Feel me. The one who is touching you is me. Remove any idle thoughts you have and just focus on feeling me. Nagamasa-sama, Nagamasa-sama. As I tampered with her rich breasts, Oichi kept calling my name as if in a delirium. However, that is the situation I desired. A situation where Oichi could not see my appearance and where she only took pleasure from her body being teased while being in a pitch-black world. My objective is to print an image inside of her that says, Nagamasa. Sama is an existence that gives me pleasure. I wouldn't go as far as calling it brainwashing, but it comes close to it. Then when she recognizes me as so, even if it means it will be accompanied by some pain when I develop her butt and uterus. Nevertheless, he will still make me feel good. I wonder if I can arrange the inside of her head like that. After that, our nightly relations will deepen further and further like a bottomless swamp. Oichi. You are so beautiful. No. Why are you saying that now? Don't be so modest. I really think so from the bottom of my heart. Nagamasa-sama, I love you my Oichi. Oichi, that's only mine. Me too. Oichi adores Nagamasa-sama more than anyone. I can't forget to properly praise and treat her gently from time to time. To develop her basically means to train her. To train her, the so-called carrot and stick policy is needed. At this very moment, I'm teasing her with the blindfold, that is the stick which she holds feelings of rejection for somewhere in her heart. While in that sea of agony, if I were to drop words of hope like beautiful, pretty, or cute, anyone, no matter who it is, would be able to bear the agony. That way, even if it means sinking deeper in that sea, they would keep on embracing it until they eventually accept it. Praising her with conceited words may come with a little embarrassment for her, however. Whether or not she tosses aside those embarrassing feelings is directly linked to whether my wife will successfully develop sexually or not. Until I was satisfied, I kept on licking and sucking on Oichi's breasts and nipples, and just like that I kept going further down until I finally arrived at her smooth abdomen. I stuck my ear to the area around her belly button and remained like that. I could not resist the faint temperature and her tender smell. Chapter 10.2 You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Development of my wife, Part 2. I wonder how long I was like that. Oichi began fidgeting around with both arms as if worried, and when she reached my head she began to brush it gently. Nagamasa-sama, is there any strange spot on Oichi's body? She said so in an insecure voice. However, there was no need for her to worry about that. I answered her with my ear still on her belly. It's okay, your body is beautiful. It doesn't have any strange spots at all. Then, why didn't you continue feeling me up down there? I think that is what she was about to say. Flustered, Oichi held her tongue. So cute. In response to that cuteness, I decided to confess to her honestly. You said you'd give birth to my child, right? Why, yes. Of course. Oichi's waist moved with a twitch, making my head shake a little. Oichi, can you feel on which part of your body my head is? That's, well. It's my body, so. Yes, clearly. I slowly lifted my body and crawled my tongue into the hole of her navel. You are going to conceive my child. With your womb down here. Taking in lots of my semen. Saying that line myself made me feel strangely unpleasant. So much as to make me run away from myself. However, for Oichi, who is completely in love with me, the situation seemed different. The moment I trusted my tongue into her navel, Oichi's hips began convulsing in a way that they have never done before. That was a sign that she was reaching her climax. I could also perceive how the entrance to her womb beneath her belly began moving as if wanting to take something in. Just like Oichi's lips were taking in my fingers this morning. Oichi. Yesh. As I pressed against Oichi's lips, her sweetness filled my head to the point where I couldn't hold back anymore. I want to take that blindfold off and see those pretty eyes. I want to witness and convey each other's excitement and passion. However, this time I have to hold myself back. If I let myself be overtaken by my temporary lust, everything I have built up till now will crumble. Right now, I must completely train my wife's body with pleasure and imprint the image that I want in her. You are my woman. I'll train you to completely match my tastes. With those words, Oichi's hips trembled even further. Meanwhile, I was reaching my greatest objective of today. Having progressed further from a while ago, she could no longer muster up any strength and lost all her power to resist. With ease, I opened up her legs and closed my face to her hidden spot. It was poorly lighted, so I couldn't properly see its shape, but from the strong pheromones that it was emitting I could tell that it was already dripping wet and sloppy. It's really pretty. Oichi. No. No. Please stop. Please stop. HNNNN, forgive me already. Even though it's dark and I can't see its shape very well, to say, it's pretty, is a man's etiquette. Not being able to do something this simple, gives others the right to throw you in the same barrel as those shitty bastards who can't even properly put on a condom. Which reminds me, ever since I've come to this age, I haven't once used a condom. There shouldn't be any in the first place though. As I continued to recognize myself as a shitty bastard, I extended my hand to Oichi's honey jar. Her hips jumped up a great deal. Combing my index finger in the space of her flirty flesh, Oichi let out a lovely voice in a funny way, making her plump but shake. No. No, don't look. Don't look. My head was shaking with a buzz, but I wouldn't let that hinder my actions. I used both of my hands to spread the gap, even more, to completely expose her pussy. As I felt the numerous layers of meat piled up at once, I perceived that Oichi's rich smell was leaking out. Now that I think about, I believe this is the first time I'm looking directly at Oichi's honey jar. I want to inspect it more carefully in a brighter place, but it can't be helped. Touching her hot pussy with my middle finger, I could feel her slimy cum overflowing. AAA. You. It's in. It came in. No. HNNN. After introducing my middle finger inside her vagina and twisting it towards her belly, it made Oichi let out a heated gasp. For now, I'm avoiding pistoning my fingers and decided to slowly massage the dirty flesh that's stickily sucking on my finger while spreading it. Feeling good from stimulation to the vagina using one's fingers as a piston is something that an expert or a woman with a natural disposition would do. On the other hand, for an amateur like Oichi, it's more typical for her to be stimulated using her clitoris rather than her vagina. What I wish for is to turn that amateur Oichi into an expert, to make her immersed and make it possible for her to reach climax with just her vagina, but in order for her to be able to do that I need to develop her pussy in a lot of ways. This pussy massage is nothing more than a preparation for that. While I continued stimulating her dirty flesh with my middle finger inside her pussy, I used another finger to start brushing her clitoris gently. Doing so made Oichi raise her lovely voice while her chest moved up and down greatly, and to suppress her embarrassment she bit on her finger. I'll make you struggle some more. Thinking that, I placed my mouth over Oichi's clitoris and began licking it. Please stop Nagamasa-sama. Oichi let out words of refusal more clearly than ever before, and while she was still blindfolded, she tried to get up. It was a voice that sounded like it wanted to blow away all the pleasure it had gotten from the caressing in an urgent way. She touched my head trying to move it away from her genitals, resisting me desperately. Geez, I don't understand why she is resisting me so hard, so I decided to continue what I was doing. You can't. A place as dirty as that is not a place where Nagamasa-sama should place his mouth. Ah, I see now. There is a huge gap between the world I come from and the Sengoku era after all. For me, there is basically no problem in caressing her with my mouth, but for a man of superior rank in the Sengoku era to put his mouth on a woman's pussy and to service her, it holds the meaning of yielding to her. For me, it's only a hygienic problem, but no matter how I put it, for a man to use her mouth on a woman's pussy is seen as irregular here. For Oichi, who has been influenced by that culture and is resisting me with all she has, must be because she's thinking deeply about my position. Honestly, it makes me happy. I'm happy, but that fixed idea is nothing more than a hindrance in my Oichi's development plan. With both of my arms I firmly fixated myself to Oichi's butt, and while holding them, I sucked on my dear wife's pussy with everything I had. Licking all over her clitoris and the entrance to her vagina with my tongue, Oichi shook her head violently and in return tried to push away my head. Well, there's no way a woman's strength can win against mine though. HNGGGG. Ah, no. Ah foo. Please, STO. While teasing her clitoris with the tip of my tongue, I told the blindfolded Oichi in honesty. Just release everything and think only of me and nothing else. Only feel me. Also, there is no way you are dirty, right? If you were a dirty woman, then there would be no way a man of my station would ever marry someone like that. Ah. You can't. No. With my strong tone and words, I dampened Oichi's spirit, and her resistance began to weaken. Good, just what I wanted. I licked her genitals for quite a while, so as to be expected, my tongue was tired. Oichi's pussy was letting out cum in huge drops without stop, our futon was extremely soaked, it looked like someone had spilled water all over it. Oichi was completely immersed in the pleasure and considerably exhausted as well. Without being able to close her legs, she left them wide open in a sluttish way, and just like that she began drooling from her mouth as her busty breasts went up and down. Oichi, you are so cute. Nagamasa. Sama. HMGGGGGGG. I leaned on Oichi and pierced her honey jar that was becoming a mess without holding anything back. Looking at Oichi's beautiful blindfolded face stirred up my sadistic heart, making me lust for her lips. The moment Oichi felt my breath with her lips, she opened up the insides of her mouth to me that were now filled to the brim with saliva, as if she was expecting the entrance of my tongue. Taking up that invitation, I decided to indulge myself in the union of our mouths. Of course, I'm not stopping the movement of my lower body half. However, I'm not going to piston hard inside her, but I'm going to move my hips in a grinding way, moving with the objective of rubbing my penis in Oichi's genitals. Ah, fua. Ah. Ah. It feels good. It feels so good. Oichi let out a heated, dirty voice, and with her powerless arms, she desperately tried to embrace me. After embracing Oichi back, I leaned my entire body weight on top of her, putting even more pressure on that delicate body. However, her body seemed happy with that feeling of oppression, letting out a long sweet gasp. Is that so? It feels good, right? It feels good. Good, yeah. I'm coming. Ah. Filled with Nagamasa-sama. Surrounded by Nagamasa-sama. Oichi is. My lower body could feel the sensation of being clamped tightly. However, seeing as my big son didn't even tremble a bit, Oichi's walls began coiling around my penis and began sucking on it pervertedly. Taking this as the proper time, I removed Oichi's blindfold. Having my penis inserted into her vagina and approaching her climax, she must have already lost all strength to fight back. All that is left is to increase my pace and continue training her with just the pleasure she receives from her vagina and my insertions. Hiding behind the sash that I blindfolded Oichi with, were her blank eyes that became unfocused because of the pleasure. Watching her with that charming attractiveness made me feel indefinably joyous, and so I began licking all over her face. Naturally, as if embracing the discomfort of my barbaric behavior, Oichi accepted it happily. Then her hips began trembling, inviting my manhood deeper and deeper inside her. Taking a look at her appearance and seeing a change, I tried stroking her neck gently. Doing so, Oichi let out another sweet dirty scream, and with her dirty hole, she began sucking on my penis while making splashing sounds. Then, no matter where I caressed Oichi, be it her shoulders, face, or the top of her head, she reacted the same way. Right now Oichi's body excitement is heightened to extreme levels, and it seems that any feeling is currently being transformed to feel like pleasure. Having noticed that, I threw away all my desires and decided to focus everything on just one thing. I took a firm hold of her waist with both of my arms, put all the strength I could into my hips and slammed against Oichi's crotch. Fua. Ah. Without even being able to say a sensible word, Oichi could only raise up her lovely voice. However, if I give her too much pleasure, she could end up becoming a sexual maniac, which would be troublesome. I would prefer Oichi to keep the shyness she always had. Inside the room, a sexual smell like none other before began engulfing the room. Inside that room was me, set on driving my hips deeper into her sloppy pussy. All this was for the sake of turning Oichi's body into one that could receive pleasure from just taking in a penis into her pussy. Fua. Hi-oh. Hi, hi-ya. Being unable to move in the spider's den that I made, my poor woman's hips trembled as she once again was carried to the heights of climaxing. Oichi's honey jar stopped her drastic measures of tightening intensely around my manhood, and it was now quietly gently wrapping around me as if trying to soothe my penis by clamping it gently and sucking it in. She has come near climax many times now, but she's not giving my big son any chance at all to ejaculate. She has completely yielded to my manhood, becoming obsessed with and just became desperate to obtain her reward without giving any thought to her current appearance. Good. No, so good. No. He. Inside my arms the most beautiful woman of the Sengoku era is now stained with my saliva and sweat, with a face drowned in pleasure, gasping like a beast, making those beautiful and huge breasts swing around and shaking her hips. My modest wife is nowhere to be found. Oichi is already unable to say a word, trapped in an extreme situation, rubbing the parts that are desired by every man in the world against my hips. Oichi, you will conceive. My child. I hold Oichi's head to my chest, and while still piercing her I stuck my penis deep inside and moved around inside her. The moment Oichi's hips received my insertion, she twisted around and began turning into an angle where my penis was able to reach it deeply. Then every time I inserted it she was able to feel a different stimulus. She was in such a dirty and silly state that it could even be described as madness, something that would be impossible for her to even think of if she was conscious of it. Thinking from the bottom of my heart that I really wished I could record this moment, I plunge into Oichi's uterus, as if giving her a deep kiss, filling Oichi's womb and dirty walls up completely with my penis. Oichi's body trembled greatly. I pulled out my hips and once again plunged into the entrance to her womb. Oichi was able to turn even that dull pain into pleasure right now. I was reaching my limit, so I ground against Oichi's depths, and while aiming for her deepest part, I thrust in her furiously. Get pregnant, Oichi. With a healthy child, just for the sake of you and me, make sure to get pregnant. Ah. My wife's body stiffened completely, her vagina and dirty walls contracted, constricting and using her womb that was gulping down on my penis to coil around it and devour it. Being unable to hold it in anymore, I shoot a lot of my turbid liquid into her inside like a hose that had just been opened. The sound of my semen being released gushingly could be heard. Oichi's vagina contracted as if it didn't want to let any of my semen escape, and under the constant stimulation on my penis, I shot a second huge wave with even more vigor. Nagamasha. Shwama. No longer being able to articulate correctly, Oichi called out for me. Naga. Oichi, you did well. Not forgetting to praise Oichi, who fought bravely not to faint, I gave her a gentle kiss on her lips. The futon, which is now completely drenched after absorbing both our sweat and body fluids, would surely give us a cold if we slept in it. I lay down Oichi to grab the futon and spread it out further, looking for a dry spot. I lay down on top of it and embrace Oichi, letting her body rest on top of mine. Groping around I grabbed Oichi's robes and put them on her back, completing my alternative plan. Just touching Oichi's soft and plump body feels good. Even though I did this to make sure she wouldn't get a cold, being able to have her sleep on top of me is a small side benefit. After doing so, Oichi's hands and mine were connected, and as we both confirmed each other's presence, we fell into a pleasant slumber. Chapter 11.1 You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 11. Season of Mackerel, Part 1, Sawayama Castle, which was the main castle for the Azais, was an extremely important location in the Omi province. When speaking of historical facts, after Isono Kazumasa surrendered himself to the Oda clan's forces, the well-known military commander and great vassal of the Oda family Niwa Nagahide became lord of the castle, and that as a wealthy retained and political administrator Ishida Mitsunari reigned as a representative of the 5 commissioners, are 2 well-known facts. It was a castle that was regarded that highly of during the Sengoku era and many ages later after it. By the way, the original Sawayama Castle is the castle of the Rokaku family of Omi. Even if one were to pursue that history, it was something that the ancestors of the Rokaku family built and something the head of the Rokaku family unusually concerned about to recapture. One from the beginning, the Rokaku family was historically in a superior position over the Azai family. Even the great hero that was Nagamasa's grandfather, Sukamasa, was frequently defeated in their many encounters with the Rakugo family, and he had to leave the Kodani castle and escape to the province of Mino. And it goes without saying that the father of Nagamasa, Hisamasa, was made to accept the military power of the Rakugo family. The Azai was inferior to the Rakugo family, that viewpoint is commonly known. The moment when that feudal situation began changing, was with the entrance of Nagamasa. Rakugo Yashikata made his vassal Hirai Noritake give his daughter to Nagamasa and handed them the name. The well-known Imagawa Yoshimoto did the same thing to the person later known as Tokugawa Ieyasu, giving him the name. In Japan, a name was proof of belonging to something. That is why the Azai's family heads Hisamasa, and Nagamasa himself used the Masa kanji in their names. Yashikata, by placing in his own name, he did not only proclaim to the country of Omi, but to all the daimyos of Japan that, this one is mine. Too, and then Nagamasa, unable to endure his father's weak attitude, made his father retire and contended against the Rakugo family for a war of independence. However, Nagamasa's situation concerning this war against the Rakugo family was hopeless. There was quite a gap in the mobilization of military power between the Azai and the Rakugo family, leaving Azai Nagamasa to be able to move less than half the numbers the Rakugo family was able to. On a certain day of August in 1560 at the rice fields of Omi, the two armies collided. Compared to the Azai forces that had around 10,000 men, the forces of the Rakugo family was close to 20.5 thousand, which was an overwhelming disadvantage for the Azai clan. However, Nagamasa taking the lead took decisive actions against the assault of the Rakugo forces. Nagamasa, who at first was an overwhelming disadvantage, was able to overcome it by rebuilding the morale and battle array of the Azai forces, and thus he was able to overturn the rumors of the neighboring countries that said, "The Azai clan will perish after this," and he managed to force the Rakugo forces into elimination. The influences of this battle, famously named the Battle of the Rice Fields, were tremendous. It was not only that Nagamasa was able to grasp his subordinates' trust, but he also caused the dignity of the Rakugo family to sink, causing inside strife, and resulted in the heads of the family to being exiled by their vassals. After that victory, the name of Nagamasa became well known, but strangely enough 2 months before the Battle of the Rice Fields, his future brother in law Oda Nobunaga was able to pull off the most notable miracle in Japanese history by defeating Imagawa Yoshimoto. In short, the year 1560 should be a commemorative year where both brothers-in-law destroyed their most formidable enemy. However, the Rakugo family, desiring to govern Omi as their protectors, were currently thinking, "We should destroy the Azai clan now, before they grow even larger. It is now or never." The year 1567, January 18, early in the morning. Yashikata Rakugo and his eldest son Yashiharu were leading a 30,200 grand army, commencing an advance on Sawayama Castle that was protected by Isono Kazumasa. The soldiers guarding Sawayama totaled to around 1,200. This time for sure, the Azai will cease to exist. Burning up with that determination, a fast horse came flying into Odani Castle to report the raid of the Rakugo father and son duo. Meanwhile, Nagamasa slipped out of Oichi's room and as usual started baking some crepes in the kitchen. The actual building was done by the Sasaki clan, which later split into the Kyogaku clan and the Rakugo clan. He basically declared with his name that all of Omi is his. Chapter 11.2 You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 11. Season of Mackerel, Part 2. On the upper and lower parts of Odani Castle, you could hear various panicked voices and footsteps. The gates of the castle were opened, and several mounted warriors rushed out of Odani Castle for the sake of scouting. That view could be well seen from Odani Castle since it sat on top of the mountain. I was currently in my personal quarters with Oichi and one of my assistants, covering my body in armor and placing a helmet on my head for the first time in my life. How strange! As I watched Oichi's hair while she was bravely binding the strings of my armor and helmet, I was being pestered by an uncomfortable feeling. I have never seen any research indicating a large-scale offensive coming from the Rokkaku family in the Azai domains. However, thinking that far ahead, I had to rack my brain some more. History is after all something wrote by future historians based on historical records. If there were no historical records of it ever happening, there is nothing to write about. The knowledge of history is not all mighty after all. I was now able to realize this simple fact. Nagamasa. Kayatsuna. Akeo Kayatsuna, already completely armed, was taking care of the grounds in and around Odani Castle, preparing the castle defenses on my behalf a couple of stairs below me. This should be done by a specialist. Due to the state of emergency, there was no time for an initial response. Being the head of the Azai family and the main commander in charge, it's okay if I later entrust the command of constructing defensive preparations to a military commander specialized in military affairs. In fact, it's obviously better if an amateur like me did not intervene at all, since nothing useful would come of it. The 30,200 Rokkaku troops gathered at Kananji Castle are marching towards Sawayama Castle without any indication of stopping. The general in command Kazumasa Dano has prepared his defenses and is holding down the castle. I see. I recalled the event from a couple of days ago where Endo Naotsun and Kazumasa were weeping after our talk. Even if he is called the bravest general of the Azai clan, confronting a great force surpassing 30,000 men with just 1,200 men, even he would be at a disadvantage. If the Rokkaku did plan on launching a full-blown attack, there is a possibility that Sawayama Castle could fall in the blink of an eye. If that were to happen, that Kazumasa would probably end up cutting his stomach, committing suicide. The preparations of my armor and helmet have ended. While feeling the weight pressing down on me, I stood up from the folding stool. As I was about to leave the room together with Kayatsuna, I felt Oichi's strong gaze on my back. Turning around without thinking, the disarranged figure of my wife from last night was nowhere to be found. It was adequate to call her a samurai princess, her cold atmosphere was hanging in the air. No, this is indeed the true Oichi. The form of a woman of the Sengoku era, who shared the same blood as Oda Nobunaga. I firmly grasped her fist. Oichi. I'll be going. Yes. Please do take care. I will be praying for your fortune in war. Nagamasa. After receiving Oichi's farewell, I headed towards the inner citadel of Odani Castle along with Kayatsuna. There Kaiho Tsunagachi, Amanamari Kayasada and Endo Naotsun and many other commanders were giving directions to the soldiers, preparing them for battle in a hurry. Nagamasa. With my entrance, the entire inside of the castle became livelier. They all came to see the brave general who once defeated the Rokkaku forces that were twice his own army's size, Azai Nagamasa. And also to see me riding on the hero's memento Taishiketsukichi. The soldiers at Odani Castle were expecting me to overcome the present dangerous situation. Never in my life have I known war, much less experienced it. Immediately after my arrival, the war council formed around me. The Rokkaku were seemingly advancing towards Sawayama Castle while gathering powerful families and citizens of southern Omi along the way. There was also the possibility that Sawayama Castle was already being sieged. To make matters worse, there was also the possibility that the messenger didn't dare to get a close look and wasn't able to get a correct reading on the number of forces on the Rokkaku side. We can't let our troops know that they will be facing such a gigantic military force as it would affect the morale of our troops. Those corrupt priests are quite desperate. Naotsun said as if spitting it out. In today's battle, if they somehow manage to take 1 or 2 castles, our family's head will lose his dignity. Taking into account the current internal conflicts of the Rokkaku clan, their vassals might regain their trust in them. So he mobilized his troops for that. That man has some fishy spots for such a bloody priest. Kayasada muttered while being annoyed. By the way, I'm guessing the one he is calling a bloody priest is Yashikata Rokkaku. Yashikata became a priest in 1599, taking the alias of Shudiite ever since. Incidentally, all members of the Rokaku family went through a great upheaval in 1563 and the lords and their retainers had driven Yashikata and his son Yashiharu out of the castle. It was only after Geimo Sadahide and Geimo Katahide had intervened that the Rokaku family showed signs of stabilizing. How many guns have you gathered? 350 at most. Tsunagachi responded with a heavy voice. Nagamasa-sama, our sources tell us that the enemy's horses count reaches around 150. I do not understand where the Rokaku forces managed to gather this amount of horses, however, to take down the commanders riding on horses with just 350 guns will be hard indeed. I see, so that's what it's all about. I was able to understand a little about the battles in this period. On the battlefield, the biggest threat here are the monsters that can't be killed by human hands, in other words, the horses. However, the military commanders riding on those horses are human, and so if we can at least take those down, the threat will instantly decrease. That is why guns are being treated as priceless treasures. That being said, the warriors riding on those horses will be charging right towards us while hiding their bodies behind that impenetrable body, so in order to intercept them, we will have to shoot at them from various angles. If not that, the only other option is to send men with spears towards the incoming horses and let them try to stab the riders, risking their own lives in the process. The same problem is with guns. How many soldiers are actually able to take down the warriors riding on the horses that are rushing towards them with terrible vigor? The will be hard indeed that Tsunagachi was referring to was probably about this. How many soldiers have we gathered? Right now 40,500 at most. However, we will be gathering close to 9,000 later on, that I see. I groaned while folding my arms. There is no way we can mobilize all 40,500 troops. That's because we need about half of them to stay behind to protect against other possible enemy forces. Besides, throwing all of our military power into the battlefield is something that only happens in games. What number of horses do we have available? We can mobilize 80 of them. Including Nagamasa-sama's Taishiketsukage it would be 80.1. I see, that's not bad at all. I stood up and climbed the castle's watchtower. From there, I could see even the farthest places of Omi without any obstructions. Unlike the world where I came from, there are no tall buildings blocking my view. The air is clear, and nature is abundant. However, due to the wars, many people here are suffering and in pain. It's an age where one cannot survive unless they fight, even if one carries a heart that doesn't wish to fight. Men are conscripted for battles, women and children are robbed, the elderly are shot to death. And while Japan is engulfed in this spreading darkness, the daimyo's life like royalty. Thinking that I could reform this current Japan into something more peaceful, I have been polishing my plan. However, this world is filled with people that do not wish for peace and would like to crush my dream while laughing at it. At this thought, I clenched my fist and gritted my teeth. Natatsu. Yes. I addressed the proud generals of the Azai clan who climbed the tower behind me. This is a beautiful view. The green is vast, and in the far distance the ultramarine color of Lake Biwa is reflected. Indeed. While letting out a long breath, Natatsu started looking in the same direction as me. There on the cusp of Lake Biwa on Mino's side stood Sawayama Castle. Every day I have wished to somehow make this beautiful country prosper. Yes. The heart of the nobles is something that I, Natatsu, have come to acknowledge and believe in. And that's the same for Kazumasa Dano. Natatsu whispered that while looking toward Sawayama Castle. Battle cries are resounding all around us, but the sky is bright, blue and cold, the air is quite clear, and the wind is blowing gently, making the trees around Odani Castle sway with the wind. A lot of people are about to die, but the current gentle climate hardly reflects this. Kazumasa, you say? Yes. Natatsu, I'm just like you, I'm also a man who earnestly thinks about the future of this country, of Omi and the Azai clan. Yes. Placing my hands on the edge of the tower, I continued while leaning on my body. You know Natatsu, I don't want to lose anyone. Our people, vassals, anyone. For that future's sake, everyone told me they would collaborate with me. This includes you, hoping for a world without war. In order to realize this, everyone said they would exert themselves for me. My lord. In the future I desire, if he is. If Kazumasa is not there, it would be troubling for me. If Kazumasa isn't there to see the world will build and be happy to the point of tears, it would be troubling for me. Natatsu. Yeah. Natatsu immediately bends his knees behind me, after giving his response. I'm going in. I won't lose Kazumasa. He is not a man that should die here today. Understood. Tell Kaitsuna. That I'm going in, that there is no meaning if I don't go. That's right, this had nothing to do with me not having participated in battles before. It's a problem of faith. There is a first time for everything. For brave generals like Natatsu and Kazumasa, there has been a first campaign as well, and they are still living and breathing. That means there is nothing to be shy about. This is my first battle. In order for the country of Omi to prosper, this shall be my first battle to let the whole world know of my conviction. Together with Natatsu, I ran down the watchtower, and after giving instructions to Kaitsuna and Tsunagachi, we headed to the stables. I reunited with Taishikatsuke while Hikobi equipped her with a harness. She looked at me with a calm expression as if she could comprehend the entire current situation and let out a cry that was as calm as the clear sky. Jumping on Taishikatsuke, a warrior handed a blade to me. It's Kanemitsu Ishiwari, said the warrior. It was used by Sukamasa-sama and later on became the possession of Hiroshi-sama. It's a legendary blade made of fluorite stones. Please make use of it in this battle. Why are you? After saying that, I gulped down any further words. The reason was that on the warrior's face that was tanned by the sun, there was an expression etched with the color of determination. I apologize, I'll accept it. After saying that to the warrior, I tied the legendary blade that was handed down through the Azai family history to my waist. The warrior beside me prepared a horse-riding spear for me. It was about 1.50 meters long. After placing it under my arm, I pulled the reins on Taishikatsuke. Taishikatsuke let out a cry and raised the upper half of her body. Open the castle gates. Our lord is going in. The trumpet shells were blown and the castle gates opened. At the same time, Taishikatsuke and I were in the lead of a 40-horse battalion, kicking up dust as we descended the mountain path leading from Odani Castle towards the main highway. With the exception of Taishikatsuke, all other horses were black males. It seems like only male horses are deployed for battle. Endo Naotsun is perfectly following behind me. His riding figure made him look extremely imposing. This is why he is known as the most powerful commander of the Azai family. While holding a spear under his arm, Naotsun handled the horse easily. My lord, please don't overexert yourself. Peeking from under the helmet shaped like a full moon, Naotsun said so while his keen eyes shined. Just like you, my lord, who said that there is no one to replace Kazumasa. For us, there is no replacement for you either, my lord. I see. As I grasped the spear's handle and let its weight soak into my body, we descended south of Odani Castle and headed toward Sawayama Castle. The distance is about 29 km. For a platoon composed of only cavalry, not having any infantry, it's not a great distance. Continuing past Lake Biwa, Sawayama Castle came into view in the blink of an eye, including the Rokkaku forces that were marching towards it. We could easily see how the enemy's expression became panicked. They probably didn't assume the commander of the Azai family would come rushing towards them directly with such a small unit. Taishikatsuke let her golden horn wave, as she let out a cry and hastened her legs. Naotsun, don't you dare die on me. Yeah. Good, you lot, we are going in. With one hand I pulled on Taishikatsuke's reins, and while firmly holding onto my spear, I shout out along with the other 40 cavalrymen as I rushed towards the enemy front line. I could feel my body trembling. As I felt the bottom of my stomach tightening up and the ground trembling, I gritted my teeth. Realizing it was me trembling with excitement is something I would find out much later. Just by running, Taishikatsuki mowed down the enemy soldiers and literally opened up a path with its golden horn. However, saying it like that makes it sound easy, but in reality, the current situation is quite severe. The infantry troops are sticking out their long pikes towards my body, making me unsure if I will survive the situation. Taishikatsuki is fast without a doubt, and she is quite effective at overwhelming the enemy forces, but at that speed, if I were to touch one of the enemy's spears it will instantly sink deep into my body, taking my life right then and there. My head went blank as I was waving around my spear in a daze, thrusting at random and swinging it downwards. While I was like that, a party of the Rokaku forces brought out the gunmen, and while facing the other warriors and me of the Azai clan, they began shooting at us. Together with a terrible thunderous roar, the bullets came shooting towards us, and from the corner of my field of vision, I saw one of the cavalrymen fall from his horse. The horse's hoofs, shooting, the angry voices and blades of the soldiers caused my head to sway. My lord! Natatsu waved his bloody lance, screaming while pushing off the enemy. Unnoticed the enemy cavalry formed a unit and started rushing towards our location. Now is the right time. Good, pull back. Overstaying more than this is unnecessary. Just throwing the enemy lines into confusion was more than enough. Together with me, 34 cavalrymen including Natatsu began their retreat. The place we were falling back to was Sawayama Castle. My Taishikatsuki could have easily shaken off the enemy cavalry that followed us and could even reach Odani Castle in no time, but the other horses won't be able to do so. A place where we can take refuge and avoid the enemy's cavalry attack is what is needed right now. All of a sudden Taishikatsuki let out a cry. Just as I thought that it was from the excitement of the battle, I could hear multiple hoof sounds behind us. The enemy's cavalry is already drawing near, huh? Thinking that, I turned my head backward, however incredibly there was not a single person on the horses, they were all horses without a master. Their number was around 10, and they were all black. In short, they were all male horses. No, there is no way something like this. Shock could be seen in Natatsu's eyes. I can't believe that the horses would willingly follow humans. What would happen normally? They wouldn't come back. Once they separate from human hands, they run away towards the countryside, to form groups and live together. I see. The drums rang as the gates of Sawayama Castle opened. Our surviving cavalry and the horses that had lost their masters came rushing in all at once. After everyone was inside, the gate closed immediately, and we headed towards the stables. There Kazumasa stood together with the other protecting generals of Sawayama Castle, waiting for us. Nagamasa-sama, something like this, it can't be. Yes, yes. Stepping off Taishikatsuki, Kazumasa approached me with a choked voice. Just for the sake of this Sawayama Castle, with such a small force and together with the great general of the Azai. What are you planning on doing, Nagamasa-sama? This is a fight that concerns all of the Azai. There is no way I'm letting any of our vassals die without trying to help. Don't you dare complain. How? How? Kazumasa bent through his knees and sobbed while choked with tears. As if it was contagious, every other soldier in Sawayama Castle began to sniff as well. We have disturbed the Rokaku's formation. It will take them some time to rearrange their stance before they start laying siege to the castle. We were only able to accomplish that. However, soon enough Kayatsuna and the other will bring in reinforcements from Odani Castle. At that moment the battle will be decided. Patting the weeping Kazumasa's shoulders, I said. Don't cry, Kazumasa. The battle has just begun. We are still at a disadvantage. Leave the sobbing for when we win. Live on. Afterwards, you can cry as much as you want. Now is not the right time. Nagamasa-sama, I have no desire to die. We have to win and make this country of Omi prosper. This includes Sawayama Castle. You too must live on and see that it happens. After that, you are allowed to die. In your own bed. Do you understand? After saying these words, not only Kazumasa and the protecting generals, but Natatsu and the other surviving cavalrymen from Odani Castle began to cry as well. I swear the men from this period are really simple. Even if my words are a little rough, they start crying immediately. However, that is something that has been lost in the period that I hail from. That's why it's dazzling. Dazzling to the point where I don't know how to respond to it. Patting the backs of the soldiers surrounding me and encouraging them, I kept in mind to ask what the situation at Sawayama Castle is later. I wasn't entirely sure about this translation, but this felt like it would fit the best. Chapter 12.1 You are listening at novelfull.audio. Inside of Sawayama Castle's quarters, the bonfire was blazing while making a pleasant sound. In contrast to modern times, the nights in the Sengoku era are completely dark. The Rokaku forces surrounding Sawayama Castle must be able to see the fires lighting up all around the castle clearly and are probably thinking, an attack under cover of night will be hard like this. Or they might actually be attracted by the heat radiating from the fire. The coldness of January makes it hard to sleep without anything breaking the wind. At dawn, the soldiers amassed at Odani Castle should be fully equipped and ready to come and reinforce us. As I spoke to the 1,200 soldiers protecting Sawayama Castle, I ordered Kazumasa to serve some hot rice gruel condiment with walnut. My aim is to ensure that the protectors of Sawayama Castle warm themselves up properly. Illuminated by the orange light, I passed by every single one of the soldiers holding a plate. Don't think of this as your eternal resting place. Just as I have married a woman of the Oda family, there are surely those of you with wife and children. Even those without a wife will still have fathers and mothers. If anything, probably all of you came here representing those who support you. Walking slowly between the soldiers, I continued speaking. I won't tell you to win tomorrow's battle. Don't die, for the sake of those waiting for you. No matter how much hell the enemy brings at you, no matter what face you make sure to cling to this world. I could see the unrest among the soldiers. And it's not just them but Kazumasa, Naetsune and the other generals as well. No matter what, one must attain victory, this is what was normally ordered in the Sengoku era. And in order to win, even if the men have, I want to live, in their mind, most of them are forced to choose the path, my only option is to die. However, they are now being told by me, who would normally force them into a, there is no choice but to die, path. Not only that, they don't have to win, but to top it off they are being told not to die. There is no way they wouldn't get restless. You lot come with me. I faced the soldiers while saying that. We, the people of Azai, must become one together and continue on tomorrow. We must live not for today, but for tomorrow's sake. In order to create a better tomorrow, we must desperately keep on living. If we don't, there would be no meaning in living. If we don't, we would lose the reason. We were born into this world. No matter which soldier you currently faced, every single one of their faces were impressed and filled to the brim with wonder. This was something pretty natural. Being informed that the head of the Rokaku clan was closing in with a great force of 30,200 men on Sawayama Castle that was only being defended by a mere 1,200 men, any of them would have thought that, this is the end. In the middle of all that, the head of the Azai family was able to turn the enemy's tides with a mere 40-men cavalry unit and managed to get inside Sawayama Castle. Furthermore, I'm now telling them to live on together, instead of telling them to die. The influence of something like that cannot be measured in the current Sengoku era, coupled with the difference in position. No matter the period, country or area, the nameless soldiers didn't decide to die for the sake of the country. That is nothing more than a facade. The soldiers died a noble death for the sake of those they love or fighting for the superiors they admire while thinking that it's okay to put my life on the line for this. First of all, eat. While sitting between Naotsun and the rest of the members, I picked up the rice bowl containing rice gruel in a way that every warrior could see it. Read the original on https://dao.ist. Eat, save some energy and become lively again. Tomorrow could be painful, but the day after our situation will surely change for the better. After saying that, I began sipping the rice gruel followed by Naotsun and Kazumasa. Immediately after the soldiers did the same and started eating their meal. To the soldiers, I am an existence higher than the clouds, but we are currently around the same fire sipping on the same rice gruel. They were restraining themselves and ate in silence, but in order not to get chilled to the bone in this harsh climate they had no choice but to warm up their bodies from the inside. Eating is something very important for humans. If they eat something cold and unappetizing, they become gloomy, and if they eat something warm and delicious, they become cheerful. With the food situation being unfavorable during this Sengoku era, for the soldiers, this rice gruel seasoned with walnut was indeed a feast. With time the voices of the soldiers became louder and so the chatting and pleasant talk began. On every single face was a smile. Watching it this close, one could not imagine that this was the view of people being surrounded by a great army 20 times its size. I waited for the appropriate chance and took Naotsun and Kazumasa away from that place and headed towards the inner citadel. Sawayama Castle is a mountain castle. To reach the inner citadel one must walk his way up. Nevertheless, I was surprised. Kazumasa said while facing Naotsun and me. Because when Nagamasa-sama and Naotsun-dano passed under the castle gates, horses without riders followed you. I, Kazumasa, doubted my very own eyes. Yeah. I decided to agree for now. A horse that has lost its master, the master being a military commander and as such being released from it, for it to return under a human's command is something considered as impossible, after all. Furthermore, the same happened with the horses being ridden on by Azai family's cavalry. Even though their riders had died, they ended up following us. It is truly strange. Naotsun lets out a sigh. At the battle earlier 6 members of the Azai family's cavalry lost their lives. However, the horses that ended up following us were 10 in total. Clearly, the numbers didn't add up. Maybe it's because of Taishiketsukichi. After that horse let out its cry, the horses approached us. Oh. Naotsun said so with a face filled with interest. On the north side of Lake Biwa under the influence of the Azai family. Residing in the northern part of the lake, Taishiketsukichi was Sukamasa-sama's beloved horse. It could be that this horse is special. No, I think it could be something unexpectedly more simple. The horses following me were all black. In short, keeping in mind that they were all male, I gave them my conclusion. Read the original on https://dao.ist. It's possible that those horses were charmed with Taishiketsukichi. Charmed. It couldn't possibly be something like that. Kazumasa laughed in an odd way. Rather than humans, for horses to have love affairs. No, Nagamasa-sama has become pretty good with his jokes. To indulge oneself in the magic that is having a love affair is something only known to fox spirits who take on the disguise of humans and gather the male's vitality as stockpile. Anything aside from that is no, Kazumasa-dano. It is unexpectedly on point. Even we, if we happen to see a beautiful woman on our way back from a battle, would do anything to protect her, right? Men are an existence that are attracted to women by order of the heavens. It is possible that horses are as well. No, Naotsun. Dano. Now you're saying things like that as well. Well, in any case, it doesn't matter. I said so to Kazumasa, who had a broad and happy smile on his face. By the way, leaving Taishiketsukichi aside for the moment, how are the other horses faring up? About that, They are currently in the Sawayama Castle stables. They received food and water, and straw was laid out for them to use as beds. They are resting at the moment. I see. I'm worried about the precedence of the horses that came from the Rakuku clan, but it should be all right. Saying so to Naotsun and Kazumasa, they groaned, I suppose. Then I asked Kazumasa to guide us to the stables once again and decided to head over there. On our way there, Kazumasa-sama, and my lord. Don't worry about formalities. What's wrong? Did something happen? We encountered a soldier who was in quite a panic, so I asked him directly. Doing so, he pointed with his finger in the direction of the quarters corner. Just now in the stables. My lord's horse has with another horse. What? Read the original on https://doubtedist. I took the Azai's ancestral legendary blade passed to me from Hikobi, Kanamitsu Ishiwaru, from its scabbard and ran at full speed. The worst possible scenario came into my mind. That monsters don't kill fellow monsters. That is what Hikobi said. He also told me that horses don't kill other horses. However, why did I just blatantly trust those words? Even though I know that something is never 100% true. Taishikitsukichi. Turning around the quarters corner and immediately rushing into the stables. What is this? I doubted what I was seeing. In the stable spread around in the form of a circle, a great number of black horses had fallen while convulsing and twitching. And in the center of the stables, sleeping gracefully in the laid-out straw, was Taishikitsukichi. Feeling completely at home, she let out a yawn as she looked towards me. However, more than the horses being down on the floor, the real problem is, what is with this irritating squid-like odor? It really was like that. However, I also understood the cause of it. Closing in on Taishikitsukichi, her eyes were entranced. Like a woman's eyes after a love affair. Just with that, I was able to understand what happened. You went ahead and devoured them, huh? All of these horses. Nay, Taishikitsukichi pretended not to hear a single thing I said and let out a cry filled with lust. Taking a closer look, the horses twitching and trembling were not only robust ones but also horses with small bodies like Shudas. The more I look at it, the more it resembles a reverse harem. Were you able to gather some men from the battlefield? Nay, I must once again revise my knowledge. Taishikitsukichi is in accordance to Sukumasa, not a beautiful and modest horse that refused to be touched by other men. It was simply that she didn't have interest in other humans aside from Sukumasa and Hikobi. And towards its own species, it was a lewd, sexually obsessed mare. It is possible that the cry after our battle was a temptation towards the male horses that had lost their riders to make them consider it as a future course of action for them. In human words, Taishikitsukichi is truly a lewd bitch. The shock I received when I realized that was truly terrible. To give a human example, when you happen to see the pretty widowed aunt living in the neighborhood that you liked as a child being surrounded by many men and devouring their dicks happily night after night. It happens in life. That being said, I really have no problem with Taishikitsukichi using her good looks to seduce the enemy horses and pulling them towards the Azai forces. If I don't think of it in that way, truth be told, I wouldn't be able to accept it. Nay, hearing Taishikitsukichi's "sleep well, see you tomorrow" sort of cry behind me while walking out of the stables, I worry about how I was going to tell Naotsun and Kazumasa the truth. Chapter 12.2 You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 12. Sawayama Castle's Defensive Battle Part 2 translated by Zevanin and released 1 week ago, read 11180 times, notice me senpai. And please whitelist us in your ad blocker to support your favorite translation. Edited by Crimson Wolf. Leaving the night behind where I discovered the shocking truth of Taishikitsukichi's true self, dawn arrived, and many guards left the castle to scout. Most of the guards of Sawayama Castle were expecting the amassing Rakuku forces to raid the quarters, so they climbed up the tower to prepare their bows or their long spears to push off the enemy soldiers who tried to climb the castle's walls. Anyone could see that their fighting spirit was truly filled with the determination of live on together. As I watched their expressions from the quarters tower, I was a little glad that I was able to motivate them with rough words, and felt that it was worth the time. However, we were still unable to see the reinforcements from Odani Castle. They must have thought right now, when they have no reinforcements is our best opportunity. From the distant enemy lines came the sound of trumpet shells and battle cries, signaling the start of the war. Just then, Sawayama Castle trembled violently. Yes, it literally trembled. HU.HU hurrah! HU.HU hurrah! From the lower quarters, the battle cries of the guardsmen of Sawayama Castle echoed. Perhaps the birds in the trees and the mountains were surprised by the oscillation of the voices, for they all flew into the sky at the same time. The cavalry has come. It doesn't matter. Fire arrows and iron balls at them. From the tower came the violent sounds of the matchlocks spitting fire and arrows pouring down like shooting stars. The horses wouldn't die easily. However, the generals riding them were not immortal. One after the other, they fell from their horses, rolling onto the ground. The lucky ones who managed to slip through and reach the castle gates managed to do some damage to the castle gate with the horses' sharp horns. However, they also became prey to the guards who had prepared long spears on top of the castle gates. As I watched that scene, I thought to myself, the cavalry was indeed strong on the field. However, for the siege of a castle, they were too fragile. Leaving aside castles on plains, they were clearly ineffective against castles in the mountains. However, the enemy did not only consist of cavalry. Ordinary soldiers were slowly approaching the foot of Sawayama. From the lower part of Sawayama Castle, the trumpet shells were blown, and the sounds of the gongs echoed. Many battle flags carried by troops had the 4-eyed pattern on them, the crest of the Rokaku clan. The sound of feet crushing grass and pebbles could now be heard. HU.HU hurrah! The spearmen at Sawayama Castle raised their battle cries as they lay in wait for the Rokaku forces coming up the mountain. However, even though they stabbed over and over, the enemy forces weren't decreasing at all, on the contrary, their density gradually increased. Shiro Yuman! I heard a scream. One of the foot soldiers had his long spear seized by the Rokaku forces and was pulled down the castle wall. There was no helping him now. Damn it. Shiro Yuman has. Shithead. Use the logs. Knock those stinky bastards down with the logs. Several of the soldiers appeared carrying a log from the main district and threw it downwards towards the mountain. Immediately after the screams of the Rokaku forces could be heard, killing their offensive. Keep thrusting at them. Like hell we are surrendering Sawayama Castle to the enemy. We will protect our lord for sure. There is no way we'll lose to those weaklings of the Rokaku forces with our lord by our side. From down the mountain came the roaring sound of the Rokaku forces' guns, causing many of the desperately fighting spearmen atop the castle walls to collapse. Each time the gunshots echoed, the soldier threw down logs towards the gun-carrying soldiers while saying, "Beat them down. They are outnumbered. There is no way we'll lose to a mere 1,200 soldiers with our great army." There must have been those of them within the Rokaku forces who were arrogant enough that think that way. The unforeseen resistance from Sawayama Castle was chipping away at their vigor. The Rokaku clan was already falling apart due to the banishment of the head of their house. The reason the Yashikata father and son duo wanted Sawayama Castle was not just because they could no longer turn a blind eye to the Azai, but also to revitalize the influence they had in their own house. For the Rokaku commanders as well as their soldiers, there was nothing but the thought of taking down Sawayama Castle no matter what. Opposing them were the soldiers of Sawayama Castle, burning with the desire of everyone must survive no matter what. Finally, from the inner citadel, we were able to see the Azai forces departing from Odani Castle, creating a cloud of dust as they came our way. The Rokaku forces who noticed this started to panic and began retreating while trying to reorganize their battle array. Now is a good time. I urged Naetsune and Kazumasa and ran towards the stables. After that, the horse caretaker was probably desperately nursing the horses. The black horses that lay on the ground while trembling after Taishikatsuki exploited them last night had their harnesses equipped. All of them had a tired look on their faces. By the way, I was stuck with the task of equipping Taishikatsuki's harness. It seemed that she still disliked being touched by anyone but me. I jumped on the back of the lady who had immersed herself in promiscuity last night. It looked like the only one who could ride this neat and tidy lewd bitch of a horse in the Sengoku period was me. When I thought of it that way, it made me proud as a man. Open the castle gates. Let's push back the Rokaku forces. As the castle gates opened, I commanded the rest of the soldiers, beginning with the now mounted Naetsune and Kazumasa, and we launched ourselves out of the castle. We had only one objective. To assault the Rokaku headquarters that was now panicking. Read the original on https://dao.ist.hu.hu. Hurrah! The soldiers of Sawayama Castle immediately raised their battle cries. Armed with their long spears, they began running out of the gate. They overlapped their voices and formed a line as they began pursuing the Rokaku soldiers fleeing down the mountain road. Sawayama was soaked in blood, and the battle flags carrying the Rokaku emblem were scattered all over the place. Third-person point of view, one Kaiho Tsunachika's eyes reflected the fleeing Rokaku forces that began retreating desperately from Sawayama Castle. Once the great forces were ready to run, there was no stopping them. They moved en masse, and just like a stampede, they began running, rushing to be the first to escape. We have won this battle. That's unusual, for Tsunachika Dano to say something so rash in the middle of a battle campaign. Said Akeo Kaitsuna, approaching from his right with his horse. They had served the Azai clan for a long time and were also comrades who had shared the glory and hardships of leading each other's soldiers. Is that so? Yes, it is. Amanamori Kayasada said as well, approaching from the left with his horse. And yet the Rokaku forces were greater than the Azai. The Rokaku forces must be restless right now. However, war is a matter of chance. Even if there was even a small chance, we too could have been destroyed. I see, it could have happened. When Tsunachika, who was heading towards 57 years of age, remarked, it made him let out a loud laugh. His voice was as if he had turned back into a young man in his teen years. It was cheerful and lively. It's over all right. This has been my first error in a while. Tsunachika looked both right and left with a smile on his face. What greeted him were the faces of sworn friends who also looked on with gleeful expressions, as if they had reverted to children. However, I'll let it pass. I'm so overwhelmed with joy, that this old man just let it slip down his tongue. I understand that feeling. Kaitsuna said with a firm tone while looking forward. Me too, when our Lord came asking us to help with internal affairs, I felt joyful, but at the same time, I felt anxious. Having joined hands with the beautiful princess of the Oda, I also thought that he was trying to run away with that lovely figure, you know. But, I was wrong. Kayasada said so. Nagamasa-sama truly thinks about the Azai and this country of Omi's future. And also, not only did he help us with our country's internal affairs, but he also showed that he was ready to rush to the aid of his retainers with his own body. Indeed. As they ran down the mountain path of Sawayama Castle, having recognized the leader of the platoon leading the assault on the Rokaku forces' encampment, Tsunachika changed his expression and stretched his back on his horse. To be honest, it's not something that should be praised. Not having us samurai generals throw ourselves into the battlefield is something unforgivable. However, Kaitsuna took the reins of his horse with one hand and drew his blade out of the scabbard with his other hand, and said, "That's our great General Azai Nagamasa-sama. It's the same as that time in the Battle of the Rice Fields." Nagamasa-sama stuck his own neck out and guided us to victory. This time as well, with his own body, he opened the gate to the future of the Azai. The country of Omi. And also, Kayasada's horse raised up half his body up high, showing his full intent of assault. Because I earnestly support the will of our Lord Nagamasa-sama, there is no other place for me than that of a retainer. Read the original on https://Daodatist Kayatsuna pointed the tip of his sword forward and yelled to all of the troops. Everyone, entrust your lives. Entrust them and leave them to Nagamasa-sama. Live on and become the founding stone for Omi. Yee-yee-yee-yee. Atop his horse, Kayasada rose his spear and shouted in the direction of the troops. Not concerning himself with the dangers he would face, Nagamasa-sama rescued those of us at Sawayama Castle. But now, it is us that will help and save Nagamasa-sama. Yee-awa-awa. Then, the Supreme General of the Azai main forces, Tsunachika, said to all of his soldiers. Everyone. The Azai are departing for a new war. Onwards. A great number of matchlocks were lit and pointed towards the Rakuku's headquarters, raising their battle cries. The 8,000 men of the Azai forces began rushing forward. The enemy had failed to capture Sawayama Castle, something they thought they could easily squash. In addition to that, the appearance of a new enemy army was something they were not expecting. The Rakuku forces immediately began to retreat, followed by the Azai forces relentlessly pursuing them. I wondered if the area around Lake Biwa would also end up just like Sawayama Castle, dyed in red, with a great number of casualties and piles of bodies. The entirety of the Azai's pursuit persisted continuously, until they entered the Rakuku's territory. As they looked at Kananji, the Rakuku's headquarters, from a distance, the Azai forces raised up their biggest battle cry as of yet. We separated ourselves from Kazumasa and the guards at Sawayama Castle, moved north past Lake Biwa and headed back to our main headquarters, Odani Castle. Around 30 horses of the Rakuku forces were following us from behind the guards. Taishikatsuki let out a cry in front of all of them. She was luring them in after all. Naotsun was happy that the horses increased, but when I thought about the truth behind it, I was unable to be happy. As we received the warm welcomes of the townspeople, we started our journey up the mountain path and arrived at the stables of Odani Castle. At the stables, the guards also gave us a warm welcome, but no matter how long I searched, I could not find the one person I was looking for. What happened to Hikobi? When I asked that, a shadow was cast on their faces. When I probed further, they answered with, "Last night Hisamasa-sama passed down capital punishment." It seemed that Hikobi had entered Hisamasa-sama's room and took something important out of it. It seems it was like that after all. I remembered the decisive face that Hikobi made before departing to the front. Ishiwara Kinomitsu. The Azai's ancestral blade, made with the valuable fluorite. That was something that he took after disobeying Hisamasa after all. 2. I won't forget that he acted while looking out for me. But if that was the case, then that meant that there was not a single person left in Odani Castle who could take care of Taishikatsuki. When I consulted Naotsun about it, he proposed to just let her free in the stables. The stables at the foot of Odani Castle was where the horses resided, but it was basically just a broad place with a fence where they could run around freely. The horses who came following us would be placed there too, so if that was the case. It seemed that the lewd bitch of a horse intended to exploit her newly obtained male victims. Thinking that we couldn't have obtained today's victory without Taishikatsuki, I thought of it as an appropriate prize. That being said, Nagamasa-sama sure seems to be troubled. The battle's banquet had ended. Oichi spoke while placing her hand on my lap while I gazed at Ishiwara Kinomitsu in her room. You obtained a great victory against the Rakuku clan, and yet is there something that worries you? No, well. I thoughtlessly denied it as I shook my head. Of course there was something worrying me. It was obviously Ishiwara Kinomitsu. In today's battle against the Rakuku family, there was barely a chance to use it. However, having a valuable sword like that at arm's reach to oppose those monsters was obviously for the better. However, this was something that Hikobi borrowed after disobeying Hisamasa. As a result of that, he had been killed while I was gone. He had vanished from my sight before I knew it. There was no way I could let his memory be in vain. There was no way I could ever forget he who presented Ishiwara Kinomitsu to me, ready to face death while thinking for my sake. I had no intentions of saying a word of these details to Hisamasa. If I said something, it would have to be recorded. If I wrote these records, it would end up becoming a historical fact for future historians, making it a stereotype without them truly grasping Hikobi's heart. That was why I stayed silent. Aside from not wanting Hikobi's memory go to waste, there was also a second reason for which I had to keep it hidden and stay silent. That was, I had to prepare a plan to deal with the more realistic issue of Hisamasa. Hisamasa would eventually realize that Ishiwara Kinomitsu was with me. Before that, I had to somehow dispose of this famous sword. However, there was no way I could just discard the valuable fluorite. That said, I had to do something. My worries were exactly that. Read the original on https://dao.ist. The cause for Nagamasa.Sama's worries is this sword. Just by being there, my clever Oichi was able to guess my troubles. Well, there is no way Oichi would betray me to Hisamasa. So I decided to tell her everything. Then with a smile, she clapped both hands together. If that is the case, shouldn't it be fine to consult Big Brother? Is what she said. Big Brother keeps many blades made of fluorite. If it's okay with you, Oichi could write a letter to him. It felt like something truly sent from the heavens. Give Ishiwara Kinomitsu to Oda and exchange it for another blade made of fluorite. It seemed like child's play, to be able to carry a fluorite sword while evading the angry gaze of Hisamasa. Thanks, Oichi. You are a big help. What are you saying, Nagamasa-sama? Having said that, Oichi blushed and whispered. Oichi is Nagamasa-sama's wife. Wanting to become your strength, isn't that something that I should normally wish for? Well, no, that was not what people would normally wish for. But being able to state it as something normal made me think my wife was quite an amazing woman. Thanks to Oichi, my worries about how to deal with Ishiwara Kinomitsu were easily solved. I took her hand and entangled my fingers. As I did it, she looked at me with eyes that were full of expectation while being a little embarrassed. Say, Oichi. Yes. What is it, Nagamasa-sama? When I called out to her, Oichi answered me while already being unable to hide the expectation on her face. She was so cute that I couldn't help but want to tease her a little bit. I am quite tired today. Is that so? When I thought of the #1 most brilliant line that husbands use to turn down their wife's temptation, Oichi became disappointed in the blink of an eye. Damn, she's too cute. I lay down on the spread-out futon that Oichi had already prepared and said to her while grasping her hand. That's why I have a request to ask of you today. I haven't been able to blow off some steam, so I'm way too pent up, you see. Kaya. Facing upwards, my big son appeared, making Oichi let out a cute cry and hide her eyes behind both her hands. However, there was a small gap between her hands. It was obvious that her gaze was firmly on my penis. That's why I decided to prolong my act. Oichi, I'm in pain. Thinking about you has made my penis become like this. It hurts so much that it feels like it's going to burst. I'm begging you, Oichi, do something. You. In the Sengoku period, it was considered taboo for a woman to request sex from a man. And for Oichi to take the lead in our sexual intercourse was considered as an unforgivable taboo as well. To act passively in response to the desires of a man. That was the role in sex for women living in the Sengoku period. However, Nagamasa-sama, what's wrong? Nagamasa-sama is tired, isn't he? But well. Because of Oichi you are troubled and in pain. Right. Yeah. Well, For a wife to serve her husband is important. Isn't it? To see. Comfort Nagamasa. Sama too is important as a wife. Right. That's right. I'm in your care. Yes. After sitting beside me and saying, "Excuse me," she slowly began extending her hands. When I remembered the softness of Oichi's hands, my big sun expanded even more with the feeling of anticipation. Chapter 13.1 You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 13. Nagamasa and Oichi Part 1 translated by Zevanin and released 3 hours ago, read 1100 times, notice me senpai. And please whitelist us in your ad blocker to support your favorite translation. For me, who was used to the softness of the beds and futons from the modern era, the futons from the Sengoku period were much thinner in comparison and as such were not as comfortable to sleep on. However, the reason I was able to put up with that was because of the fact that my beloved wife slept beside me, or perhaps it was simply because of the satisfying feeling that was left behind after having sex and falling asleep. While determined to improve the environment in which one had sex, I watched Oichi as she repeated the movement she started moments ago. Rubbing my overswelled member while moving her hands. Illuminated by the dim light of the room's lanterns, that beautiful face was dyed in red with embarrassment. Even though we'd already had a lot of rich intercourse up till now, that face of her was still so innocent. Nonetheless, up till now, it had been me touching her and making her melt little by little, but this time would be the first night that Oichi started touching me first. She probably had no idea what to do. That was the feeling I got from her. Say, Oichi. Yes. She must have been waiting impatiently for my voice. Immediately after hearing my voice, Oichi bent her back, looking at me with a face dyed red. That face of hers made her look similar to a little puppy waiting for the orders of her owner. Seeing this made me realize once again how precious she was, and it made me unable to help myself. Remember. I taught you before, right? Do it like that time. Ah. While laying still, I extended my hand and brushed her face. After doing so, she twisted her body a little, making it look like it tickled as she threw a smile my way. Go ahead, touch me. After brushing Oichi's face, she got closer to my big member with her face, as she started touching it. My robust penis faced the ceiling at a 90-degree angle. Oichi's flexible fingers entwined themselves right below the glands. Seeing my penis react with a twitch to the stimulus made Oichi let out a mischievous laugh. Aha! Nagamasa-sama's penis. It's cute. How rude. My big member was manly, cool and sharp, and it was certainly not something that could be called cute. When you considered the large 30 cm shaft that had veins all over it, I couldn't imagine which part of my penis could be called cute. I couldn't understand Oichi's sense of beauty. That being said, my penis was not used to being complimented and, almost like it responded to the compliment, started twitching and leaking out beads of pre-cum. It looked like it was mortified. Nagamasa-sama, it twitched again. Is it moving? Yeah. It's happy being touched by its beloved Oichi. Oh, my. While watching from above, Oichi started narrowing her eyes and brushed her hair behind her ears. Wow. Amazing. It's so hard. And it's already like this. Oichi's breath started turning haggard, as she rubbed my big member softly. Each time she stimulated my glands with the ring formed by her fingers, pre-cum overflowed from its opening, soaking Oichi's white and nimble fingers and creating an obscene sound. Last night. I wasn't able to do it with you. That's why it's all piled up. Piled up. You mean? Read the original on https://dao.ist. I'm talking about the baby juice to make you pregnant, of course. There was nothing dignified about my crotch standing upward like this, but I spoke to Oichi in a natural and imposing way irregardless. Even an embarrassing line like that could sound dignified if one said it in the right way. After telling her that, Oichi stopped rubbing my penis and hid her face. When I spoke a line like that so frankly, it probably made her come back to reality and realize what she was currently doing, making her feel embarrassed. However, I wasn't about to let her stop for such a simple reason. I guess it couldn't be helped. I'd have to persuade my beloved wife once again. Oichi, I think I want to be honest with you tonight. Yes. Nagamasa-sama has such a frank and honest personality. So Oichi is. No, I wasn't referring to that. You see, all men, myself included, are living beings that like to brag and bluff to other people to look better than others. Try to remember that. Oichi looked at me with a face that said. Does Nagamasa-sama do that to me as well? After patting Oichi's head as a prelude, I whispered. Don't be surprised at my effeminate side. Last night was the first night I've had to spend without you by my side since we exchanged our vows. It was very lonely. After I said this, it seemed that my words made Oichi's heart surrender completely. Oichi's whole face was colored with emotion. Nagamasa-sama, Oichi was also very lonely. She threw herself on my chest and embraced it. The loneliness of sleeping alone without Nagamasa-sama was such an unbearable agony, that I can't even bear to think about it again. Me too. Before marrying you, I didn't think women were this good. Oichi rubbed her face against my chest. I stayed silent and patted her head. When I did that, she looked as if she was happy from the bottom of her heart. Oh God, she was so cute. Oichi, I want to make love to you. Nagamasa-sama, Oichi wants to as well. I'm aware it's a shameful request. But, I too want to make love to you. Oichi seemed to have mustered all her courage and told me her inner thoughts. If it were the usual me, I would become too excited, and I'd instantly bend her upper body and mercilessly thrust my penis inside her. However, today I was taking a different approach. However, Oichi. Read the original on https://dao.ist, yes. As shameful as it must sound, there is no energy left in this body. No matter whether it was day or night, I had to pull through together with Taishikatsuki and confront the Rakugo army that was 20 times bigger than ours. It has probably taken its toll on my body. Nagamasa-sama, of course, I went a bit overboard with my story. However, the biggest charm the men of this age had was their bravery. This charm should work on Oichi just as well, and there was no doubt that she must have heard exaggerated tales of the battle from some of our retainers already. Surely inside her heart, Nagamasa should equal to something like, to save Oichi, and without taking appearance into account, he faced a great army and earned a victory against it, making him the most splendid and amazing husband a wife could get. Something along those lines should have been engraved into her heart. However, right now in front of Oichi's eyes, this so-called wise lord of the retainers was showing her a weakness that he would never show to said retainers. Without a doubt, this stirred up her maternal instincts fiercely. I beg of you, Oichi. Even if you think of it as a one-time thing, won't you appease this burning sensation in my body? After making that request, Oichi slowly got up, spread out 3 fingers and bowed her head. If Nagamasa-sama is okay with me. I see. Just as planned. I had a large smile on my face. Oichi was a little entranced, but she showed off an embarrassed smile as well. Oichi, is it okay if I ask a favor of you? Yes, please ask me anything. I was going to take her up on that promise. The me right now was, without a doubt, wearing the face of a scoundrel. I led Oichi to the futon, letting my head rest on her knees. Nagamasa-sama. It's alright. Extending my hand to the kimono that my confused wife wore, I inserted it into the space around her chest. Doing so made the cloth on her right shoulder loosen, causing Oichi's right breast fall out like jelly. It was a beautiful, large breast with the perfect color, shape, and charm. However, Oichi was instantly bested by her shyness, and on reflex, she quickly hid it with one hand. However, she could not hide it with her tiny hand, so I still had a full view of that beautiful breast shaking in front of me. Oichi, don't hide it. No, But. Read the original on https://dao.ist. What, was it a lie when you said that you'd help alleviate this sensation from my body? Ayuyu. That's. You. When I spoke with a frank, disappointed voice, Oichi slowly took her hand off her breast with a bright red face. Seeing her pink nipple made my excitement go through the roof. The hardness of my big member increased and stood up in high spirits. Ordering Oichi to lean forward, I licked the pointed end of her right breast with the tip of my tongue. HNNN, I heard an erotic voice from her. However, my gaze was completely blocked by Oichi's right breast, so I could not peek at her expression. On. Ya. Licking her pink nipple with the tip of my tongue, it became hard before I knew it. It wasn't like it had any taste, but for some reason, it felt really tasty. Her nipple that was now soiled with my saliva still held a certain elasticity bouncing against my tongue, which I greatly enjoyed. Oichi, service me as well. Just like before. Yi. Yes, Oichi, while letting me suck on her nipple, grasped my big member with her flexible right hand and started rubbing it up and down. Oh. This is such a bliss. Eventually, with her left hand, she touched my head, and as if comforting a child, began patting my head. Nagamasa-sama, looks just like a baby. Oichi stroked my penis and patted my head as she said something like that with a soft voice. I'm fine with being a baby. I'm just so obsessed with you that I can't help wanting to be pampered. That's. I'm saying it's okay to show my true feelings to a good partner, in other words, to you. How? Receiving my frank and gentlemanly persuasion, Oichi looked confused and had a flustered face, and as if trying to relieve some of her shyness, she began putting more effort and affection towards my big member. Nagamasa-sama, what should I do to make you feel good? My precious sister. Law didn't teach me those type of things, so, stated Oichi in a soft and embarrassed voice. I started by sliding the rest of her kimono off, exposing her upper half completely as I continued to suck on her right nipple. Oichi's breath became even more haggard, and in turn, her elastic fingers around my big member began increasing their speed. Feeling that, I took my mouth away from her right nipple and brought it over to the left. The tip of her left breast that had not received any stimulus was still soft. I closed in and softly kissed it with my lips, making it sway gently. After extending my tongue towards it, with a little teasing, it gradually became hard. Oichi gasped every time I rubbed it or when it slightly touched my teeth, and as she patted my head, she gradually increased the speed of the up and down motion of her hand that was grasping my member. I felt like I was losing to her, so I placed both of my hands on Oichi's breasts and brought both of her nipples towards my mouth. Just like that, I began sucking and licking both of them at the same time. While doing so, the sexual desires began to slowly take hold of Oichi and me.